Hi everyone, and thank you for being here with me today. My name is Kathy Ward and I'm the founder of Mindful Academy International, an accredited provider of training excellence and continued professional development provider with a globally recognized professional development consortium. I run mindfulness teacher training courses, 8-week mindfulness-based stress reduction, and 4-week mindfulness-based emotional and social intelligence courses for groups and one-to-one, plus mindfulness-based emotional and social intelligence in the workplace courses that can be adapted to suit a company's requirements. I'm also currently working as a mindfulness consultant for the WHO and have written and developed a custom mindfulness and emotional intelligence course for them, which is currently part of a World Health Organization research project to assess its benefits. The first research exceeds our expectations, and the full research will be completed by the end of the year, and we hope to publish a paper to share the findings in 2022. But today in this webinar, we're going to focus on mindfulness-based emotional and social intelligence, and we're going to be finding out why these are essential skills for the changing world and workplace, and how developing presence with curiosity and compassion can increase our mental health, resilience, well-being, and happiness. And at the end of the webinar, we're going to be exploring a quick and easy, actionable strategy that is part of Embessy to increase presence, build trust, and enhance work-life balance. And rather than being a mental training that focuses on cognitive abilities, mindfulness-based emotional and social intelligence is fundamentally different due to its emphasis on experiential learning and these actionable strategies to create new tools to enhance your work and your life. But life is busy, and we may have been caught up with meetings, we may have a huge to-do list afterwards, there might be 101 different things that we need to be doing, although that's there. So I invite you to take a moment to see whether you're actually really here. Or perhaps you're multitasking or distracted. These things happen, it's a busy life. In fact, in an era of unstoppable distractions, Daniel Goleman of Emotional Intelligence fame shares that we must learn to sharpen our focus if we're going to contend with, let alone thrive in this changing world. And focus is the hidden driver of excellence. And we'll see how that actually turns into self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management skills. Luckily for us, with a moment of mindfulness practice, it can take just a moment to arrive. So I invite you to practice with me. So starting off by taking a moment to see the colors and the textures and the shape around you. Maybe even noticing if the eyes are moving rapidly. Slowly. Maybe even tuning into seeing what it's like to hear the sounds around you. And then choosing to redirect the attention to explore any felt sense of touch or pressure of the body against the chair, the feet on the floor. Perhaps the movements of the breath, no special way to breathe. And seeing if it's possible to let go of anything that you were doing before this webinar or anything that you've got planned later, to arrive in this present moment. And when thoughts carry you away, which they will, that's what the mind does, without judging, choosing to arrive once again. Focusing on the present moment, the here and the now. It just takes a moment to arrive. So the intentions of mindfulness-based emotional and social intelligence are to create a solid foundation of these skills with actionable strategies to support a respectful workplace and life environment. But they're also essential skills for life in themselves, let alone for work. So you can take the course and learn these skills without needing to be part of a workplace environment. We'll also look at improving resilience, mental health, well-being, and work-life balance, and contribute to creating a collaborative culture of trust by improving interpersonal team and client communications, increasing accountability, performance, and reducing conflicts. And very much in this present moment, in these times that we're in, it's important to build community for people coming back to face working, but also recognizing that there may be staff who are going to continue to work in remote locations. How can we build a sense of community where we've got these two different work environments? So COVID really has thrown everything up in the air for us. There's been some rapid changes about the way that we work. And there's changes coming up now as we start perhaps optimistically to ease our way out of the pandemic. And what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing is that there's a lot of people who are actually dreading going back to long commutes on crowded transport, working in a closed environment, having less time at home. Perhaps they didn't notice the effect of getting up at 4:30 in the morning for their long commute and getting back at 9 o'clock at night. But now they've had a chance to see it clearly and work in a different way. It's causing some difficulties. So as we move forward together, we all need to be able to clearly and effectively communicate these concerns so that together we can find ways of working that support health and well-being and a respectful environment and hold on to a work-life balance. And from the people I've worked with over the years, whether they're working from home or face-to-face, thoughts about work intruding into home life is the #1 problem that they want help with. We each need to find smarter and safer ways of working together, both in our outer worlds, finding the space that we need, and our inner worlds, so that we're able to leave work at work, and so that we're not always thinking about it, and that we can actually enjoy life. And this is where a mindfulness-based approach comes in. Mindfulness practices have been internationally popular in the past few decades, but their roots reach back 2,500 years. So there must be something into this if it's been lasting this long. But the real shift, I think, was over 40 years ago when John Kabat-Zinn, a professor of medicine at the Stress Reduction Clinic at the University of Massachusetts Medical School, developed the now famous mindfulness-based stress reduction course, which is suitable for the general public. Mindfulness-based practice is now a globally researched and established modality, incorporated in programs for the general public, healthcare, the workplace, and more. And studies show that mindfulness increased self-reported workplace competencies. Participants felt they were better able to make decisions, work creatively, and relate to others, among other leadership qualities following the interventions. These results align with the predictions made in prior reviews about mindfulness in the workplace, positively impacting decision-making and interpersonal relationships, and with prior research showing that mindfulness practice can also enhance cognitive flexibility. But mindfulness-based emotional and social intelligence actually brings in emotional and social intelligence, as the title says. And as Daniel Goleman says, this is the capacity for recognizing our own feelings and those of others, for motivating ourselves and for managing emotions well in ourselves, in our relationships. And research on emotional and social intelligence shows significant increases in all of the facets: recognition of emotion in the self, regulation of the emotion in the self, recognition of emotions in others, and regulation of emotions in others, and also nonverbal emotional expression. And knowing one's own emotions, self-awareness, recognizing a feeling as it happens, is the keystone of emotional and social intelligence. And within this, there are 4 skills. There's the self-awareness, but there's also self-management, once we know that something is happening, that we can then choose what we want to do about it. And then once we can become aware of our own emotions and how we can take care of ourselves, then we can sort of widen our field of awareness to become aware of those around us, and also learn how to work in relationship with others, to communicate effectively with others. So the program I have put together combines these two modalities that have got all of this research behind them. And it's been specifically developed for the changing world that we live in. It's also trauma sensitive. There's a lot of trauma around in the world as it is. So we need to be careful about the practices that we bring into our lives to see whether they're right for us. And also to think about how we can make this experiential. How can we turn these skills of practice into real life strategies? And so there are formal practices with Embessy of 5, 10, 20 or 20 and 30 minutes. They're the starting point. Then we need to take these skills out into our life. Not all mindfulness recordings are the same. So these are specifically recorded for the context in which we're talking about here. And the real life applications are specifically orientated for the changing world that we live in. With Embessy, there are 2 courses. There's a foundation course that explores through practice and experiential exercises, mindfulness-based self-awareness and self-management, and an optional second course, mindfulness-based emotional and social intelligence, widening the circle of awareness. And this builds on the foundation of the first course and brings in social awareness and relationship management. So what about the research? Here is what could happen to your life if you set the intention to train your brain. The present research provides support for all the benefits of online mindfulness interventions in the workplace settings, even for those participants who already have prior experience with mindfulness or emotional intelligence. And so consistent, reliable, and reproducible research shows all of these lists of benefits that you can see here. And I've included a slide at the end of the webinar so that you can see the resources for where I found this. So Embessy courses can enhance mindfulness, well-being, self-perceptions of emotional intelligence, and workplace performance. And don't discount the benefits of even short practices like the one we practiced at the beginning of this webinar. While the length of the interventions and amount of daily practice prescribed varied across studies, research has shown that the length of the intervention, length of the daily practice, and delivery format can vary and still have a positive impact on employee outcomes and measures. So we've had a look at the benefits, but what about what it isn't? And so it's not about trying to relax or transcend ordinary life. Mindfulness-based practice has a specific intention of waking up to living on automatic pilot and choosing to gently turn towards whatever happens to be sitting or standing or walking or moving within us, within what we call our window of tolerance. It can help us to find our inner calm, but more often than not, we're likely to notice our inner waves. And there's a quote by Jon Kabat-Zinn, the founder of mindfulness-based stress reduction, who actually says, we can't stop the waves, but we can learn to surf. And so this is what we're doing. We're learning how to turn away or to ride those waves and find balance whenever we need to. With practice, we may even be able to widen our window of tolerance with curiosity and tolerance, and as best we can, practice accepting whatever is sitting, walking, moving with us, knowing that we have the skills to turn away at any time we need to. We're really developing a space to ask what's called for now, responding with friendliness, kindness, and as compassion as best we can. One other sort of thing that people say to me about mindfulness-based practices, well, I can't practice because I can't empty my mind. Well, the good news is that's not actually what we're doing. And I sort of also say when I'm running training courses that really and truthfully, the only time that we're not having thoughts is when we're dead. And I don't know about you, but I'm not rushing. So what we're doing is we're learning how to relate differently to our thoughts, to look at them rather than from them, to see them as just thought bubbles coming up that we can choose to let go of. You don't have to get caught up in them. And these are some of the skills that we'll learn. It's not a religion or a new age thing. 2,500 years of study shows us that it's not new age. It's been around for a long time. And the research is into projects and courses that are in the workplace, in healthcare, and various other places as well. And so it's not a religion. It really is a set of practices for the changing world that we're living in. It's also not going to seduce you or adopt a fake positive or passive attitude. Sometimes we really do need to take action, strong action. And what will happen is the skills that you'll learn with this of being able to arrive in the present moment is to be able to choose what you need to do. And from a calmer center as you ride those waves, choose what action that you need to take. So you are responding to it rather than automatically reacting. These practices aren't difficult, we just need to practice them. And I don't know about you, but our days often give us a lot to practice with. So talking about our days, I'm wondering here what your typical day looks like. Maybe it's changed over the last year, 18 months, maybe not. And the research shows that an ideal balance is 8 hours of work, 8 hours of enjoying life in the present moment, and 8 hours of sleep. So perhaps taking a moment to just think about what's your work-life balance at the moment. When you finish work, however many hours a day that might be, are you able to leave the work at work? Even if it's just a matter of closing down your laptop, are you able to leave it there? Or is the mind constantly thinking about what you need to do? When we're busy, it's easy to become so engrossed in work that we pay little or no attention to the needs of our body. And perhaps we even find ourselves missing lunch, eating at our desk. And this is life on automatic pilot. And it really doesn't bring any work-life balance. So perhaps making a picture in your mind, what would you do with any extra time in the life category if you were able to find this work-life balance? Maybe you'd have extra time for hobbies, play with the children, take the dog for a walk, take yourself for a walk. What difference, if any, would it make to your life? And one of the actionable strategies really from Embessy is to take a moment to write down anything that you would like to do that could bring any sense of joy, happiness, tranquility, contentment into your life. And then add it to your diary in the same way as you commit to a meeting, an appointment. You're committing to life. Of course, what I'm not saying is that their life is easy and we can just wave a magic wand. Mindfulness-based emotional and social intelligence definitely isn't magical. It isn't a magic wand. And the problem is that in the life we create an idea of how we want things to be or how we think we should be. And then we compare our ideas with the reality of how things are right now. And if there's a difference, we create thoughts, ideas, and actions to try and close the gap. It creates friction between how things are, how we want things to be. And when we're on automatic pilot, we're usually continuously monitoring to see if we're closing the gap between the A and the B. And we can get caught in seeing thoughts as facts and a pattern of what you have to do with little awareness of the present moment, or the cat needs food, or you need to just go and open the windows or have some lunch. We're often analysing the past or worrying about an imagined future, which reinforces habitual patterns of thoughts and behaviours. And this works well when there are things that we can actually do and action we can take to achieve our objectives, whether it's work or life. However, if we're unable to find a solution, or we try and we get nowhere, we may start to get trapped in loops of repetitive thoughts and rumination. And that's when we start to close down the window on awareness of the present moment. Here it can create difficulties and become more challenging to let go of our habitual patterns or feel confident to try new ways. Psychological stressors have also been shown to be more damaging to our health and well-being than the actual events that triggered them. I'll say that again. Psychological stressors are also shown to be more damaging to our health and well-being than the actual events that triggered them. The mind and the body are completely linked. So one of the actionable strategies is that we need to find ways of letting go of any craving for things to be different, so we can work on what we can do rather than getting caught up and focusing on what we can't do or what is outside of our area of influence. But what gets in the way of this is the fact that we're hardwired for survival. The amygdala, two little tiny pea-shaped objects in our brain, are our emotional brain. Two little tiny pea-shaped things are responsible for all of our emotions. And it's an ancient evolutionary strategy designed, or structure should I say, designed to respond without hesitation to real or imagined threats to keep us safe. And the problem is that research shows that imagining a threat lights up similar regions as experiencing it does. I'm just wondering what that feels like when you hear or read that. Imagining a threat lights up similar regions as experiencing it does. So within a few milliseconds, our bodies respond with biological changes that prepare us to fight, flight, freeze, even though there may be no actual physical threat to attend to. So what actually happens is an area of our brain called the prefrontal cortex, which is here behind the forehead, it's our thinking brain. It goes offline in what we could call an amygdala hijack. And when this happens, it blocks slow and reflective thinking, tipping us into automatic patterns of behavior. Now, automatic patterns are great when we need to jump out of the way of a bus or we need to escape from a tiger, but it's not so great when we react to a frown across the conference table or the dining room table or a face on Zoom. Might have absolutely nothing to do with us. Instantly, we're into reacting. And the reason for this is that fear in evolutionary terms has a special prominence, perhaps more than any other emotions, because it's crucial for survival. And if you think about it, our ancestors, yours and mine, were absolutely brilliant at it. And that's why I'm sitting here and you're sitting where you are. So we're really good at this. And this so-called negativity bias primes us for survival. It limits awareness of pleasant or neutral aspects of our life that are always there, that have got nothing to do with surviving, that we so often don't notice. They can, however, help bring balance to our lives, richness to our lives, joy to our lives. However, should we only focus on the positive? Don't we sacrifice connection and new ways of responding if we choose to avoid anything in the present moment that is unpleasant or difficult? This is where the skills of mindfulness-based emotional and social intelligence come in. Because between this stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So what we practice actually gets stronger. Whether we are going down the route of arriving and seeing what's happening and responding, that gets stronger. If we go the other way and we are reacting on automatic patterns of reaction, then that gets stronger. So we have a choice if we bring ourselves into the present moment. What do I need to do now? And remembering that what we practice gets stronger. And this is because of something called neuroplasticity, the changing shape of the brain by repeated experience, and it goes on unwittingly throughout the day, and we're typically unaware of these forces. And that's a quote from Altered Traits by Daniel Goleman and Richard J. Davidson. So what is this other way? How can we choose to respond rather than react? It needs to be a conscious choice. We need to choose to learn some skills. And this is where these practices can come in. So the first one is by developing mindfulness-based self-awareness. Because, as we've said, the mind and body are intricately interwoven, indeed co-arising and co-creating the felt experience of the present moment, any movement of the mind creates a bodily response, and any tension or release in the body brings a corresponding movement in the mind. So we're learning how to pay attention in a specific way. This is in the present moment, and as non-reactively and non-judgmentally and open-hearted as possible. Quote by Jon Kabat-Zinn. So choosing to wake up and become aware of what experiences we're attending to and how we're attending to them is basically what we're doing with mindfulness-based self-awareness. And here we're dropping into the senses, the 5 senses of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touch. And each one of those can actually help us drop down into the present moment, to let go of getting caught up in the mind. And from here, we're able to see the mental events, that's the thoughts, the emotions that are coming and going, and choosing to let them go and seeing if it's possible just to become aware of this present moment, to choose to be here right now. Because what's the alternative? Well, we can get stuck on automatic pilot, and it's very, very easy then to get triggered by an internal or an external event, get stuck in rumination or resistance, and end up totally whacked and unable to live life fully or well because we're just exhausted. So we have a 3-stage alarm system. We get an alarm, oh, we need to take action. If it doesn't meet, or we don't like it, it doesn't meet our expectations, then we start to create resistance. Maybe we tell everybody about it, we get onto social media. And so there's a thing called co-rumination, which actually keeps rumination alive because we're just feeding it. And then there's that 3rd stage, if we don't take action with any of the other 2, that we can just become just totally overwhelmed, tired, not able to do the things we love, really not feeling that great. So there are options. The good news is there is something that we can do, because how we see things shapes our reality. So I invite you to become aware of the picture. Is it static or is it moving? If you change your perspective by choosing to direct your attention to only one part, what happens? Often people report that when they first see that picture, it's moving. And then when you choose to focus the attention on one part, it slows down or it stops completely. We're able to see it more clearly. And so this really demonstrates our initial perception of something may well be wrong. And we've also got to remember that someone else's perception is actually their reality. So we might see something in one way, somebody else might see something in another way. So with mindfulness-based self-awareness and self-management, we can practice observing if we're holding on to our perceptions too tightly. Instead, seeing if it's possible to see things from all sides. And this actionable strategy, again, what's called for now. But life and working life is now very different because of the pandemic, and things may never go back to the way they were, however much we may want them to. And perhaps it's opened up new possibilities and you don't want to go back to the old ways. So letting go or letting be is a sort of a way of living that we explore with Embessy. It asks us to step back and see if we're holding on to thoughts, behaviors, actions, and expectations that are actually preventing us from moving forward to living our life. There's a quote by Eckhart Tolle that I really feel fits really well with this, that sometimes letting go is an act of far greater power than defending or hanging on. Sometimes letting go is an act of far greater power than defending or hanging on. So I invite you to see whether you are actually hanging on to something. Are you happy, sad, anxious, bored, stressed, tired, or some other feeling? I invite you to ask yourself, how am I feeling right now? What are you doing or what were you doing when I invited you to explore? Were you here in the webinar? Were you multitasking? Was your mind somewhere else? This isn't about judging. This is about recognizing self-awareness. It's only when we're aware of something that we can take action. And also, were you currently thinking about, or were you thinking about something other than what you were actually doing? So these are 3 questions that come from a research project. So let's have a look at what they actually found. They discovered back in 2010, Matt Killingsworth and Daniel T. Gilbert found that actually, on average, 46.9% of the time of our waking hours is spent thinking about something that isn't going on. And this was a web application for iPhones, and you can still download the app from trackyourhappiness.org to contribute to the scientific understanding of this. But this research covered 83 different countries with age groups from 18 to 88, and the collectively represents every one of 86 major occupations and categories. So it's not a small study. Yeah, okay. 46.9% of the time we're not actually thinking about what's going on. We're somewhere else. We're worrying about an imagined future, or we're ruminating about a past that we can't change. I don't know about you, but I don't have a time machine, so I can't go back and change something. But we spend so much energy, we waste so much of our life thinking about things that we can't change. What their research also showed was that a wandering mind is an unhappy mind. And unlike other animals, we spend a lot of time thinking about what's not going on around us, contemplating events. And so far, the conclusion is that we're unhappy. Unfortunately, the ability to think about what's not happening is a cognitive achievement that comes with an emotional cost. And the research into neuroplasticity, that idea of being able to change the way our brain functions and the connections our brain makes, shows that what we practice gets stronger. Many of the world's greatest achievements came from reflection and thinking. Sometimes, though, we just end up getting stuck in a hole, going around and around, and remember that our bodies react to imagined threat in the same way as a real one. And this isn't conducive to mental health, well-being, and work-life balance. And this continuous exposure to COVID-19 news, or whatever it is that happens to be in the press, in the world at the time of watching this webinar, fosters rumination, creating a lot of distress and anxiety about what's happening and what the future may bring. But the good news is that just like our physical muscles, if we go to the gym, we can train our minds. But why would we want to do that? Why do we want to train our minds? Surely our minds are already busy enough with what we do, the skills that we've learned. Well, we just need to remember that figure again. 46.9% of the time we're not here, we're not actually living our lives. So the skills and practices of mindfulness-based emotional and social intelligence gives us the options for working with repetitive thinking or rumination that causes us distress, dis-ease, or anxiety. We can become aware of when we've been caught up in thoughts and emotions and choose to return to the present moment. Just that self-awareness and that self-management can make a massive difference to our lives. And this can help us to let go of thoughts about work when we're not at work. And that's a key skill for healthy work-life balance. And we'll be exploring a practice about that in a moment. So what we need to do is create opportunities for mindfulness-based self-management, recognizing and reducing, therefore, the negative effects of habitual reactivity often helps us feel better no matter what's going on. And as I mentioned earlier, research shows that when we give our full attention to our sight, hearing, taste, touch, and smell, the brain quietens down its default chatter of the wandering mind, giving us space for self-management opportunities. We can choose to stop the friction. And we do that by growing presence, that presence in the present moment, the ability to recognize the whole of our experience, whether it's pleasant, the unpleasant, and the neutral. It really is the opposite of living on automatic pilot, doing the same old things in the same old way and wondering why we get the same old results. It may be what's needed. Often it's not. And I'm sure we all have things outside of our influence or that we can't change. What we can do is learn how to let go or let be, so we're not ruminating on things that we have this no control over. What's called for here is actually practicing acceptance. We're not saying we need to accept everything. As I've said, there are times when we need to react strongly or respond strongly. But by practicing acceptance, we're turning towards it and seeing if with curiosity, some tolerance, even allowing it to be there. If there's nothing that we can change, just fighting against it, it's creating more of that friction. And here we're able to find our calm center in the eye of the storm. We're riding those waves. Here we might find peace, groundedness, tranquility. From a place of balance, we can also keep lines of communications open, listening, understanding, and responding to our inner needs, our inner worlds, and our outer worlds, to the world around us, the people around us. We talked a little bit earlier about an amygdala hijack, when the prefrontal cortex goes offline. And Dr. Dan Siegel is actually this quote: the best way to prevent an amygdala hijack is to increase your mindfulness-based emotional and social intelligence. This is your ability to understand and manage your emotions and use this information to relieve stress, build trust, communicate effectively, and empathize with others, diffuse conflicts. When our amygdala flips us into habitual patterns, the prefrontal goes offline. We're literally flipping our lid. This just poof, comes offline. And what it does is it slows reflective thinking. And our bodies react in those milliseconds with biological changes, we've said. And the prefrontal cortex is responsible for body regulation, attuned communication, emotional balance, responsive flexibility, fear modulation, empathy, insight, moral awareness, and intuition. The best way to do this is to learn mindfulness-based emotional and social intelligence skills and actionable strategies, so that we can learn how to ride those waves, whether we're in a completely calm situation or whether the waves are actually huge. We can learn the skills. So far we've looked at the importance of recognizing and responding to our emotions. However, we live our lives with others. So we need to expand our circle of awareness to be able to interpret the mood and emotional states of those around us. This is our mindfulness-based social awareness skills. And they'll help us to accurately interpret emotions of those around us and improve every single interaction that we have if we're practicing self-awareness, self-management, and then the social awareness skills, helping to ensure the people we interact with feel heard, understood, and appreciated. This is vital if we're talking to others about going back to face-to-face learning or changes that are happening. We both need to be able to say what we're feeling, but also hear what other people are feeling without feeling threatened. This is about establishing trust. And it takes time to build that trust, but moments to destroy it. So by becoming self-aware and self-managing, we can just ground ourselves before we automatically react or speak or do. So being mindful of how we feel and what we say in our actions, and clearly seeing feelings and patterns of communication, expressing them accurately, will help us to find balance in our relationships, especially those that we are finding challenging, whether they're in the workplace or at home. And so what we're doing with mindfulness-based relationship management is being able to find ways of living and working with others. Here we're developing empathy, the ability to understand and relate. However, it can cause burnout as we become overwhelmed. We're also developing compassion. Compassion is the motivation to act, to relieve suffering, difficulty. Life is not necessarily difficult because we're doing something wrong. It's just that life can be difficult at times. It's this shared human condition. And when we're able to see it in ourselves, we're more able to recognize it within others and to do something to actually help us all live better lives. So mindfulness-based emotional and social intelligence are the keys to the present moment. This is just one modality. There are others out there, but here the intention is to be here and now. This gets our slower reflective brain online, and we wake up to those automatic patterns of reactions. We can choose to bring our attention into the present moment. Often, as I've said, with mindfulness, we talk about awareness, and that's the flow of data. But attention is the choice point, the focus point, what's called for now. Where do I need to pay attention? And attitude is always a choice. So these are the essential skills for building trust, community, and a respectful environment in the changing world. Mindfulness-based emotional and social intelligence is learning to increase the mind's capacity for being aware, choosing where we place our attention and how we respond to the information from the senses and the mind, these mental events that we were talking about. You might call this training your mind, you might call it developing conscious awareness of the present moment, which is, after all, the only time we're truly alive. The only time we can make choices about how we live our life is in the present moment. Research reveals that actually you'd be correct in saying you're learning how to integrate the different areas of your brain, literally strengthening the brain's ability to regulate things like attention, thoughts, and emotions and behaviors. So a question for you to reflect on, really, and to reflect on as you go through your day, through your week. And it's not about judging, it's about choosing to arrive into the present moment and asking myself, am I living my life right now? And presence, as it says here, where we're embracing the place where life happens, is the ability to be in the moment, aware of the whole of our experience. It's the opposite, as I said, on living on automatic pilot, doing the same old things. With presence, we're not thinking or worrying about the past or an imagined future. Instead, we're opening to the space of new opportunities, building in choice, and responding with curiosity and kindness to whatever needs our attention right now in this moment, whether at work or whether we're at home. We know the mind is hardwired for survival to spot the real or imagined threats. So this is a real opportunity to find balance by dropping into the senses and opening to whatever is present or pleasant in this moment, however small. It's the law of the little things. We'll notice the big parties, the fiestas, all that type of thing. The law of the little things are what help us find balance. And it might be just taking a moment to look out of the window as you're walking to work or walking wherever, actually seeing what's around you. The flowers, the textures, the people, just like you, just like me, running around. It's possible to stop, to arrive into the present moment, to taste the cup of tea, to enjoy satisfaction of a job well done. It really does, in my experience, help to address the imbalance that this so-called negativity bias, this survival strategy predisposes us to. Here we can truly live our lives, taking action when needed, and in the process we may increase our levels of mental health, well-being and happiness, as well as finding a work-life balance where we can truly live our lives one moment at a time. So mindfulness-based self-awareness is where it all starts. We can't stop the waves, but we can learn to surf. It only takes a minute to arrive. It's a practice I've found that can have a profound effect on my life, and I hope that it supports you too. And please share it with as many people who'll listen. And here's that practice that I promised you at the beginning of this presentation. By practicing this, we're creating space to allow transitions, maybe in the absence of commuting. We can manage the boundaries between work and home. We can manage to just drop in to the present moment and out of the thinking mind. So I invite you to practice with me, taking a moment to just see colors, textures, and shapes. And as you practice, maybe noticing whether the eyes are moving slowly or rapidly. Sometimes that reflects the activity, the movement of the mind, if it's busy or whether it's calmer. And just by dropping into the senses, we can quieten down that default network of the chattery, wandering mind. And for the E of self, exploring any felt sense of touch or pressure of the body against the chair or the feet on the floor. You practice this as you're walking, moving, sitting, with traffic lights. Or perhaps you can notice the movements of the breath, no special way to breathe. And the L of self is letting go or letting be. Recognizing when thoughts have taken you away to the past or an imagined future. And without judging the wandering mind, choosing to come back, to arrive once again. It only takes a moment. And the F of self is focus. Focusing on the present moment, choosing to arrive, choosing to be in our life. Here we can ask ourselves what's called for now, because sometimes when we come back, life isn't pleasant. So we can just ask ourselves a self-management actionable strategy. What's called for now? How can I be kind to myself? This practice can take a short time, a few minutes. Self-awareness, key to presence, and enhanced work-life balance. So mindfulness-based self-management, really, when we get to know ourselves and step back from our inner world of sensations, thoughts, and emotions, this self-awareness, we can choose not to get caught up in them or driven by habitual and often unhelpful patterns. And here's this where we're giving ourselves the choice to respond. Setting the intention to develop presence is a key mental health, well-being, happiness, and work-life balance. And I really like this quote by Ringo Starr. At the end of the day, I can end up just totally wacky because I've made mountains out of molehills. With mindfulness, I can keep them as molehills. So we're not saying that these skills are a magic wand that can make life absolutely fantastic. But what we are saying is we can learn to ride the waves. We don't need to be swept away by them. So to thrive in these changing times, we need new skills and actionable strategies to enhance our mental health, well-being. And remember that happiness is possible even in the midst of difficulty. It's not about ignoring anything or trying to be positive, as these things rarely work. With a foundation of mindfulness-based emotional and social intelligence, we can practice getting to know and stepping back from our inner world of sensations, thoughts, and emotions. And with curiosity and kindness, rather than getting caught up in them and driven by habitual and often unhelpful patterns, we're really giving ourselves a space to choose to respond in a new way. We can then widen our field of awareness and open our attention to the outer world, focusing on the people around us. This is mindfulness-based social awareness. People just like us that may be struggling with the changes. Building on mindfulness, self-awareness, and self-management, we can better listen, understand, and respond appropriately, building this trust that we've been talking about, transforming relationships, and creating essential skills for the changing world and the workshop and this workplace. And you may like to take a moment to ask yourself, if you were able to do this, what difference would it make to your life? So today we've explored a little bit about why mindfulness-based approaches plus emotional and social intelligence are essential skills for the changing world and workplace. How developing presence with curiosity and compassion increases mental health, resilience, well-being, and happiness. And how to develop self-awareness, this actionable mindfulness-based emotional and social intelligence Embessy strategy to increase presence, build inner and outer trust, and enhance work-life balance. And if you're curious and want to know more, there are actually courses that you can take to be able to bring this into your life. And then maybe you'll be able to share them with others. There are teacher training courses as well if you wanted to go that far. But as with everything, it actually starts with ourselves. They're not difficult practices. We just need to learn how to do them and then do them. So the Embessy Foundation course, which looks at self-awareness and self-management, is 7 hours over 4 sessions. And that's available in corporate settings, on a one-to-one basis, and in small group settings online. Then there's the optional Widening the Circle awareness course. And that's again 7 hours over 4 sessions, again for corporate, one-to-one or small group settings on over the internet, online. And that one actually looks at social awareness and relationship management. And full details you can find on mindfulacademyinternational.com. So I'd like to thank you for actually taking the time to listen to this presentation. You may want to have a look what's on my website to see what information is there. You may want to reach out to me by email at inquiry@mindfulacademyint.com. You'll also find me on LinkedIn, and I have also given a TEDx talk, and the link there is there, both on my website and on the last page of the presentation here. So it just reminds me, it remains for me, should I say, to thank you very much for taking the time. I do hope you find moments to arrive in your life to practice self-awareness. It really will make a difference to your life if you're able to make choices. Remember, which pathway do I want to go down? Do I want to train my brain to respond? Or do I want to get caught up in that hole of continued reaction, which might be causing me difficulties? But whatever you do, may you arrive. May you be well. Thank you for listening.